Okay, we're going to give this a go. Hopefully it's going to work. So hello everybody. Um, so you should have done the two warm-ups, and now we're going to do a little screenshot recording of what your notes are going to be for today, this Wednesday, and my apologies for not being there. As I mentioned to some of you, I was going to be out and not feeling too well today. Okay, so if you've noticed in those two warm-ups, what you should have saw are some examples of some linear functions or writing equations of a line. And what we're going to look at now are three different formulas or forms, however you want to refer to it, to come up with the equation of a line. And so the first one is that we're going to look at is if the information you're given is the slope m and the y-intercept b. This is one you've all seen before. Anytime you're given the slope m and the y-intercept of b, what you need to do is you need to use the slope-intercept form. So let's go ahead and write that down. And what you've been used to is y equals mx plus b, but we're going to put it in function notation this time. F of x equals mx plus b. And so there's your form. So if you're given the slope and you're given the y-intercept, very simply you just plug those numbers in and now you have an equation for writing a line. And that's the first method that you can use to write an equation of a line. The second method is if I give you the slope m and just one particular point, what you're going to use is you're going to use the what's called the point slope form. So use point slope form. And hopefully that makes sense because you're given the slope and you're given a point that lies on the line. So you can use point slope form. This may be familiar to you. It's really straightforward. It is y minus y sub 1 equals m parentheses x minus x sub 1. Now, what are all these pieces? Y and x are just your equations, or excuse me, just your variables that are going to stay into the equation. Just like up here, we have f of x, which is essentially y, and x that are left as our variables in the equation. This y and this x are going to stay as your variables. This y1 and x1 are the coordinates of the point you've been given, and m, of course, is your slope. Excuse me. Now, looking at this, I want to make a note a little about this because this doesn't tell us a whole lot as far as graphing. So anytime you start with slope intercept, or excuse me, with point slope form, you want to manipulate it. Manipulate to get f of x equals mx plus b. So we're going to have to start with this, and we're going to have to do a little work to end up with slope-intercept form. Okay? So if you're given this piece of information, you use this form. If you're given these pieces of information, you use this form. And then finally, the third version, if you have 2 points, let's say these 2 points lie on the line, what do you have to do? Well, the first thing you have to do is you have to find the slope of that line. So find the slope of the line. And if you remember to find the slope, you subtract your y coordinates, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay? After you've found the slope, essentially what you have is you have a number for the slope and you have a couple of points. You can pick points, or pick one of the points, and that will be point slope form. Okay? Alright, so these are 3 forms that we're going to use to figure out the equation of the line here. So, let's take a look at the examples on the next page. And so if you look at this first example, the cell phone costs, what we want to do in the instructions is use the graphs below to write an equation of a line and interpret the slope. So the first thing we got to do is write an equation. So let's identify what we have. So what do we have here? Well, we've got a couple of things. First off, this 0, 50, that's your y-intercept. So we know we have the y-intercept. And that has a value of 0, 50. And we also have another point. Okay, and our other point is 1051. So we want to write an equation that represents that line right there. So if you think about what we have the y-intercept, we still need the slope. So what do we still have to do here? We got a couple of things that we still have to do. We know that we're going to need the slope. Okay. We know that we're going to have to end up with slope-intercept form. And then the last thing we have to do here still is to interpret the equation. Okay, so let's do those things. So first thing, let's find our slope. So to find the slope, remember it's y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I'm going to take these two coordinates. It doesn't matter which one's x1, y1, as long as you're consistent. So I'm going to go 51 minus 50 on top, my two y coordinates. And on the bottom, I'm going to go 10 minus 0. So because I went 51 minus 50, I have to go 10 minus 0. If I were to reverse these and go 50 minus 51, I would have to go 0 minus 10. And so what do we get? We get a slope of 1/10. So that's the first thing we have to do, find the slope. Now that we have the slope, we have the y-intercept, we can go ahead and do slope-intercept form. Okay, so my slope-intercept form, f of x equals mx plus b. And I plug in my information. So this is my m right here, because that's my slope. Up here is my y-intercept of 50. So I just go ahead and plug in my numbers. F of x equals 1/10 x, my slope, times x, plus my intercept, which is 50. And here is the equation that represents this cell phone plan right here. Now what we want to do, the last thing we want to do is we want to interpret this thing. So what does it mean? Well, it means a couple of things. First of all, $50 right here, this 50 is my base price. So the base plan is $50. That's the first thing we interpret. Base plan is $50. Now, what's this 1/10 stand for? That's how the x's are changing. So you look at your x's, and x is the number of text messages sent. So you're going to spend 1/10 of a dollar for each text message. So how do we interpret that in terms of common language? Since it's 1/10 of a dollar, we would say each text costs 10 cents. So it's kind of an outdated plan. Most plans now, it's just everything's unlimited. But hey, you know, that it's still a good problem for you to show. So base plan is $50. That's how much we have to pay regardless. 1/10. If we look at X, it's number of text messages sent. That means each one costs a dime. All right, looking at the second example problem. Let's see, what do we got going on here? So it looks to me like we've got 2 points. So we're given, so if we look at what we have, so if we look at what we have 2 points. And my first point is 1085. And my second point is 2095. So if we go back to the previous page and we look at what are we supposed to do if we have 2 points, it's right down here. So we're going to find the slope first, and then we're going to use the point slope form. So to do, change my colors. Oh, let's see how the brown looks here. So to do, we have to find the slope. This one we're going to use the point slope form. And then of course we still have to interpret. Alright, so let's go about doing that. So first thing, let's find the slope. So I'm going to write it down again, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. I'm going to go 95 minus 85 for my y's. And because I went 95 minus 85, I have to go 20 minus 10. So I get 10 over 10, which just comes out to be 1. Cool. All right. Okay, so that's my slope. Second thing we want to do is we want to do point slope form. Point slope form, which is y minus y sub 1 equals m x minus x sub 1. And we know the m we're going to use is right here, which is 1. As far as the y1 sub 1 and the x sub 1, it doesn't matter. Pick either of these points. I'm going to choose this one right here. And I'm going to call this x1, y1. And so I'll plug those numbers in. So it's going to be y minus y1, which is 85, equals my slope, which is 1, times x minus x sub 1, which is 10. Now to clean this up, ooh, hard to see there, there we go. To clean this up, we got to do the distributive property here, so I got to multiply 1 times x and 1 times negative 10, which fortunately it's 1, so yay. So we get y minus 85 equals x minus 10. I just did my distributive property. And now what we have to do is we have to solve. So we add 85 to both sides. And so what do we have? We have y equals x plus 75. Okay? So now what does that mean as far as what we have? Well, we're talking about homework grades and completed assignments. So this number right here, this base value, okay, so if we go over here and interpret. So let's interpret that. This means that your homework grade, if you do 0 assignments, so 75 is kind of your base value, so I don't think that makes much sense, but it says here that maybe your current math homework grade is a 75. Current grade is a 75%. Let's say that, okay? And then a slope of 1 means that for every homework assignment you do that you turn in, your grade will go up 1%. So grade up 1% per assignment. So we're kind of squeezing that in down there. Per assignment. So that's kind of how you interpret those things. You look at this number, this is our base value. You look at the slope and kind of interpret what it does. And this one right here, each text costs 10 cents. And this one right here, each assignment will increase your score by 1%. Okay? All right, lastly, let's look at example number 2 where we are doing some modeling in mathematics. Okay? So here's what we got. If we look at this problem, it says the cost of parking in a garage in Chicago is represented by this equation right here. Y is the total cost in hours and X is the time. So this equation represents Chicago. This table right here shows the cost of parking in Denver. So for 2 hours you spend 43 bucks, $3.51, $4.59, $5.67. First question, which city's parking garage charges more per hour and by how much more? So we got to look at essentially what our variable costs are. So Denver, our per hour cost. Now you can kind of look at this and say, okay, it goes from 43 to 51 to 59 to 67. You can say, hey, that's going up by $8 an hour, which is the correct answer. But I want to show you how to do it mathematically. Because what if I only gave you 243 and 567, and I asked you to figure out? It might be a little bit harder. So what you can want to do, anytime you want to find something that's per hour or something that's changing, that is going to be your slope. So in this case, if we wanted to find how much Denver charges, we need to find the slope. And so that's going to be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And I'm going to use my two ends. So I'm going to use those numbers right there. And so I'm going to go 67 minus 43, which is x2 minus x1 over 5 minus 2. And you can see I get 67 minus 43 is 24 over 3, which reduces to 8. And so that 8 represents how much they charge per hour. Okay, so that's Denver. They charge $8 per hour. With Chicago, what we want to do is we want to look at the equation. Y equals 15x plus 20. And we just want to look at the slope here. Chicago, with a slope of 15, means they charge $15 per hour. Okay? So good times, $15 per hour is what they charge. So that means Chicago charges more. Okay? All right? Hopefully that makes sense. $15 per hour. Okay? So, which city charges more? Chicago. So your answer is going to be Chicago. Charges $7 more per hour. Okay? So which city more per hour and how much more? Yeah, Chicago. $7 more per hour. All right. After how many hours would parking in both cities cost the same? So here's what we need to do. We've got an equation for Chicago over here. We need to come up with an equation for Denver. So let's go ahead and do that. Once we have that equation, we can turn around and we can create a table. Alright, so my Denver equation. I know that my slope is 8. And what you can do is you can pick a random point. I'm going to pick this first one, which is 243. And I'm going to run that through the point slope formula. So let me rewrite it. Y minus y1 equals mx minus x1. And so I'm going to plug numbers in. So y minus y1, y minus 43 equals m, which is 8, times x minus 2. Alright, so we need to first do the distributive property. So I'm going to go 8 times both of those. And so I'm going to have y minus 43 equals 8x minus 16. And now I just add 43 to both sides. And I get y equals 8x minus 27. Plus 27. How about I do that? Plus 27. All right, so there's the Denver equation. We got the Chicago equation up here. And so what I would do is I would just create a table. And so you got your hours, and then you've got Denver, which is 8x plus 27. And you got Chi-Town, which is 15x plus 20. And I would just go through and chunk your numbers. So after 1 hour, or let's start with 0 hours rather. Let's start 0 hours. Okay? At 0 hours, Denver, second you pull in, they're going to charge you 27 bucks. And then Chicago's only going to charge you 20. After 1 hour, basically, since you got a slope of 8, you're going to add 8 to that. 35 bucks. Since you got a slope of 15, you're going to add 15 because that's your hourly rate. 35 bucks. And look what they got. 1 hour. So your answer would be cost is the same after 1 hour. Same after 1 hour. Okay? That's all I have for you today. Go ahead and jump into your assignment, which is on the web page, pinckneya2.blogspot.com. Take care, and I'll answer any questions you have tomorrow. Bye now.